Hey, good evening. Welcome in to State of the Tigers, another edition of our weekly show talking Mizzou football, Mizzou athletics here with you on powermizzou.com. We are brought to you every single week by our friend James Carlton. James Carlton, State Farm Insurance in Webster Groves. You can get in touch with him at carltoninsurance.net. You can call him at 314-961-4800, which is something I did last week. I got in touch with James, finally got switched over. He's going to be taking care of me and my family, home insurance, auto insurance, like start to finish, guys. The whole thing took like 2 hours. I mean, James was there every step of the way. He is now the official insurance agent of 2/3 of our staff, and we're working on the other one. We'll get that taken care of in a little bit, but I cannot recommend James highly enough. Again, 314-961-4800, carltoninsurance.net. He also wanted to make sure that I let you guys know he's still doing the deal this year, where if you call him and get a quote and you tell him you heard about him from Power Mizzou, he's going to donate $25 to the NIL fund. For you getting the quote. You don't have to get the insurance, just get the quote. He's going to do that. We hope you get the insurance. We think you will. So that is taken care of. We got the business done. Now we got to get down to the business, and that is Jarod Hamilton joining us now. This is our last show. This is our last show where we have to kind of like make things up to talk about, right? And scour Twitter to find things to get angry about or whatever.
Yeah, last show of improv. There we go.
Yeah, exactly. It's been a long off season. And I truly am impressed with these people that do like daily podcasts. I don't know how they find enough stuff to talk about, honestly. But here's where we want to start. And this is not where we were going to start. So I just happen to be looking around, and everybody's doing predictions, and hey, everybody has opinions, and I'm not getting mad at anybody for a prediction. Whatever, you make a prediction, it's right or wrong. But ran across Barrett Sallee's SEC predictions. Just clicked on it just to see kind of where he had everybody. He has Missouri going 7-5. That is the first 7-5 prediction I think I've seen. So before we get into the bigger discussion, like where's 7-5 on your radar of like, is this a possibility for this? And again, predictions, we're just assuming everybody stays healthy. We're not going to get into, the possibility that guys get hurt and all that when we're doing this.
That's pretty low. I just pulled up the schedule, and I'm trying to think. I'm gonna go 7-5. 5 losses. I'm trying to figure out the 5. Maybe there's 3 where you can say, okay, obviously Oklahoma, Texas A&M, Alabama. Seems like those are the key games. So if you want to easily make those to 3, but then we talking about either losing to South Carolina, Mississippi State, Arkansas, Auburn, or Vandy.
He predicted South Carolina and Auburn as the other.
Okay,
ones.
I didn't actually see who he predicted the games. I just saw the record. So you said South Carolina and Auburn.
Auburn, in addition to all 3 of those kind of swing games.
No, it's just not. It's not on my radar. And we've talked about this, and you've talked about it before. It's something about if you're a fan of a particular team or you cover a team, you know a little bit more of the in and outs of what's going on and the level of players they got. So I'm just thinking, based on their talent and the fact that they're healthy, and if they continue to be healthy, I just can't see 7-5 with that schedule.
Yeah, so that kind of leads to the bigger picture conversation that I want to get to in a minute. But I would say 7-5 is, I'm not going to say it's impossible. I've seen enough football to know weird things happen, especially in this league, right? I think 7-5 is the worst case, somewhat realistic scenario for this team this year. I think, you've got Oklahoma, Alabama, A&M. We all know those. Okay, let's say you lose all 3 of those, right? And then are there 2 more losses? I mean, there's 2 things. First of all, momentum is a real thing, right? So if this team goes down and loses to A&M, And if they do come to homecoming and lose Auburn, and then they go to Alabama and lose, they're sitting 4-3. And everything this team wants is off the table. So at that point, yeah, I can easily see Oklahoma and South Carolina losses because they're not playing for anything. So that's one thing. But the last two Missouri teams, 2 years ago, they lost basically every game that they had a chance to lose, right? I mean, it was, every time it was a one-score game or a close play at the end, they managed to lose it. Last year, that was exactly reversed. Well, I'm sorry, it wasn't, because Georgia and LSU, they could have won those games. So they didn't win every game they could have, but I mean, they got probably more favorable breaks than went against them. So I just think the odds of all of the potential swing games going against, like, I think 7-5 is worst case scenario, and I wouldn't pick worst case scenario being likely for anybody.
Yeah, and something just specifically with his predictions for them to go 7-5 and lose the games you said, that basically means after Vanderbilt, which is week 4, they'd have to lose 5 of their next 6. And just
Yeah.
with the talent of this roster, it's really
The only
hard if
win
they're
would be
healthy
UMass.
yeah, it's hard to imagine that they couldn't compete, and I think that is in part that's maybe just a 10,000-foot view or something like that. I mean, no one's really been checking in on Missouri like that the past couple of years, so it could be some of that of just like, oh, Missouri, I hear they're doing well, they got a roster, but maybe it's Missouri.
Yeah, so I want to be clear. This is not like, and also want to invite you guys, if you're here, comment, put your questions up. We'll get to them throughout the show. If you want to be part of the show, we invite that. Like and subscribe and do all that stuff while you're here. I want to be clear. This is not like piss on Barrett Sallee hour. He's welcome to his opinions. He covers college football, and hey, that I'm not here to promote let's hate this guy.
Right.
My larger point here is, I have not seen a national person. There may be one. I have not seen one pick Missouri as a playoff team. I have seen most people pick them 9-3. I have seen some people pick them 10-2. But say, with that schedule, I don't know if 10-2 does it. I've not seen anybody put them in the playoffs. So my question is, are we, like, because we see them every day, because we saw last year, maybe we're too high on this team? Like, I think we've got to check our own bias a little bit and say, hey, if everybody else is saying this, do we need to look at what we think about this team?
I mean, yeah. I mean, I feel like it's 50-50. I'm not going to try to be like, oh, no, I can see how somebody was just like, well, you cover the team, of course, and they would just assume, because I know you've been getting this for, this is year 21.
Yeah, this would be 22nd season. Yeah.
22nd. Okay, so I know for 22 years when people say like, when they talk about the team or whatever, and they say y'all as if they're talking like if you're a part of the team, they always say like, you know what I mean? And we're just like, no, we just cover the team. It's different. But I get how someone just assumes power Mizzou. You guys cover Missouri. That's the thing. So yeah, but and the same, it's like I said, it's 50-50. Just like they could say that, we could also say, how many games of Missouri football have you watched, even just last year, let alone the last couple years, and ebbs and flows and players that have gained and lost. How many have you watched? People outside of Missouri or that are not Missouri fans, they're probably not going to say more than a couple, to be honest. So, you know how it goes.
I think there is some truth to Travis's comment. Look, in general, I don't love this, but we're Mizzou. People are never going to believe it until they see it. I do think in college football, more than almost anything else, there is a brand name bias. If you cover the NFL, look, you saw the Detroit Lions go to the NFC title game and probably should have won it. And then they have a pretty decent offseason. Like, I've seen a lot of Detroit Lions Super Bowl picks this year. I've seen some New York Jets Super Bowl picks this year. I've seen a couple of Cleveland Browns Super Bowl picks this year. My point is, if you cover the NFL, you base it on what happens on the field. You base it on, hey, this team did this last year. They added this, they lost this. I think Major League Baseball, it's largely done that way, right? This team had a good offseason. They should be better, blah, blah, blah. For some reason in college sports, and especially in college football, it's really not done that way. It's, yeah, they had a good year last year and they added some, but, I mean, Oklahoma's been good for 60 years. So I'm just going to, I believe Oklahoma. And look, I actually think Oklahoma is a pretty good team. I'm not saying Oklahoma won't be good. But my point is, if you ask me to tell you what the 2031 preseason top 25 is, I bet I'm going to nail at least 15 of the teams that are in it. If you ask me today, I'm going to nail 15 of those teams.
Right. And this is something that doesn't just extend to like preseason polls and what people think are going to be for the playoff this year. I mean, even think about the NFL draft. How many times have NFL teams drafted someone and it seems like people the people they pick get judged because of the helmets they wore. Like
Right.
for Ohio State quarterbacks, no matter how well they played in college or whatever, it just seems like that's kind of the basis. When the Bengals usually drafting people from LSU or Alabama or one of the blue blood schools, people. I mean, I know there more goes into that than that, but it makes sense to pick the guys who go to the blue blood schools who have all the resources playing the biggest games and get those guys on your team rather than taking a chance on, whoever from whatever school. So yeah, that bias and stuff like that happens in college football and even when it, goes into the draft and stuff like that.
It is the slowest sport to change. And there's good reason for it. Because if you look at the teams that were good 60 years ago, most of them still are good. But I mean, it took a full decade for people to stop talking about Nebraska as a national power. We're still, I think it's been 20 years since Miami won 10 games. And we're talking about Miami as a playoff team. Now, look, Miami could get to the playoffs, but like that, there is this, if you used to be good or if you have been good, there is a benefit of the doubt that you get that Missouri doesn't get. And again, I don't want to, they're ranked 11th in the country. They are not being crapped on by everyone. So like, it's not some huge disrespect, but I think, if you have LSU's brand name, you are more likely for someone to pick you as a playoff team than Missouri is. Because it's the safe pick. Nobody's gonna say you're an idiot to think LSU could make the playoff, right?
It, right.
Missouri, it hasn't been there.
It's the safe pick, and also again for the national pundits and media and stuff like that, whose games are, like you said, more broadcasted nationally. Like for a casual fan or somebody doing the media, it's much easier to be like, after a day of work, let me turn on the LSU 7 o'clock game. Even if you work the whole day and you cover something, it's much easier to do that and turn that on to say, oh, Missouri's on. Like, and that's just what it is. Like, it's easier to do that. So they have more eyes, on their product. So yeah, it goes to that benefit of the doubt you was talking about.
So let's now kind of dive into though, and like I don't want to make this the show that pisses off Missouri fans, but let's kind of look at this in that I do think that this fan base largely. I was talking to my friend that covers Ole Miss today, and I think the two programs are like they're so identical right
They're
now.
pretty close. They're pretty close.
Not traditional powers, but they've been really good. They're getting a lot of national buzz. They have charismatic coaches that people like, that make headlines, all that. A lot of similarities, right? And we were talking today, and I think Missouri's fan base is to the point where, well, if you don't pick them to make the playoff, you're an idiot. I think this fan base is assuming that this team is in the playoff. And I'm not at all there. Like, I think they have a definite chance to make the playoff, but like, it is not hard for me to see. I think the biggest mistake we make in sports is that we always assume everybody's better next year than he was last year, right?
Yeah.
Well, let's go back and look at what people thought about Brady Cook 12 months ago, right? Well, we're never going to win 7 games with this guy. Well, then he went out and did it, right? But now it is almost, well, yeah, he's one of the best in the country. He's going to be better than he was last year. What if And I'm not even saying if he's bad, but what if he takes a step and a half back, and he's a little bit closer to the guy you thought he was 12 months ago than the guy he was last year? I could see 8-4 in that scenario.
Yeah, I mean it's possible. I think if he, for your specific example, if he took a step and a half back, I would think closer to 9-3 and maybe I don't know 9-3, 4 games. Even that still seems like
I
I
mean,
just feel like a lot would have to go wrong
Jarod,
to move.
they lost 2 games last year and had to get 4th and 17 to win another one, and had to make a drive in the last 2 minutes to win it. Like they were 12 seconds from 4 losses last year.
Yeah, but then again, I could flip it and say, I mean, could have added 2 more wins on the board,
A hundred
and so
percent.
and so
I'm just saying the line is. I don't think, like, you can paint me a picture where Missouri's a good team, just not quite as good as last year. Don't get quite as many breaks, and 8-4 is on the table. I have a hard time seeing 7-5, but 8-4 could be.
yeah, I think it's just a balancing act because I feel like part of it is the what do you say you don't like what Missouri people do, like woe is Missouri type thing.
Mhm.
That on top of the 2022 season, even though that was 2 years ago, it's still fresh in a lot of people's minds. And you see those one score losses. I think they went like 2-4 that year in one score
Yeah.
games. You kind of have that, but last year they improved on that and they have a lot of that same talent returning. They've got more continuity on offense and stuff, the people who can make plays and put points up on the board. So I think you just kind of have I don't know, it's got to be a balancing act because if we would have did this a year ago, we would think, can they change 2-4 in those one score games to 4-2 or something like that? So it just depends. But I definitely get what you're saying though.
Yeah, it's like John says. I mean, your four plays determine whether you're 7-5 or 11-1. 4 plays. That's it.
Mhm.
And it's not Missouri. It's every team every year, right?
Mhm.
Now the elite teams, the teams that are always there, the Georgias, the Bamas. You know what they never do? Almost, they never lose that game at South Carolina. They never lose that game where they're a 10-point favorite. Their
Yeah.
losses are to other top 5, top 10 teams, right? And that's
Right.
why they're a top 5, top 10 team, because they don't lose to anybody else. So Missouri's job, as we've said all year, if you want to be a playoff team, there are 9 games you almost cannot lose.
Absolutely.
There are at least 8, and I think I would put Auburn in there. I think if you lose to Auburn, I think
Yeah.
it becomes tough to make the playoff.
Yeah. If you lose to Auburn, because is that the week before Bama? Let's see. Oh, I still got the schedule pulled up.
It's the week before
It's week.
UMass.
No. It's a week before Bama. It's after
Bama.
UMass.
Okay.
So yeah, you lose a game like Auburn because yeah, I put that in the same group as part of the 9 you should win. The pressure to win the Alabama game, especially because that's going to be the next game after.
Right.
Well, it's a lot, and like you said, Alabama.
Especially depending on what happened at A&M. Right. If you already lost at A&M,
Yeah,
then if you lose Auburn, you got to run the table.
you do, and unless the A&M turns out to be like really good, top 20, top 15 team, even still, yeah, you're still putting your pressure if you've lost to them and Auburn going into Bama.
Right.
So, and they don't, like you said, they haven't kind of been in a spot where they win these games that much. Like they don't have that. Well, we can go back to this at least with this regime.
Yeah. Yeah. So Travis had kind of echoed the thing on Brady, and then Kyle brings up the other big thing where I think it is fair, if you are looking from the outside, if you were a Missouri fan and pick a team had lost what Missouri lost on defense, your initial reaction would be they're taking a step back, right? So I just kind of, I mean, Darius Robinson gone. I kind of wrote, look, Zion Young isn't replacing Darius Robinson. Zion Young is replacing what Johnny Walker was last year, and they need Johnny Walker to replace what Darius Robinson was last year.
Right.
Is it possible? Yes. It is. Is it a given? Absolutely not.
I agree. But here's the thing: this is a formula, at least since I've been here, that they follow. Like year one, it was Isaiah McGuire. My first year, it
Mhm.
was Isaiah McGuire, and then they basically asked D-Rob to do the same thing. They even moved him from defensive tackle to defensive end. We need you to be that guy, and then Now you can say that for Johnny Walker. And Johnny, I mean, he got a good start because I remember D-Rob's, well, that 2022 season, he had 3.5 sacks. At one point in the season, he was actually benched for a game or two. He was
Mhm.
replaced in the lineup. So Johnny Walker didn't have that. His biggest thing, and we talked to him earlier today, getting his attitude in check and making sure he's on the field and making those plays. But for
Yeah,
his first year,
there can be zero personal fouls this year.
right. But for his first year of basically real playing time and starting, 43 tackles, 9.5 tackles for loss, 5 sacks, and team high 3 forced fumbles. Like that's a good baseline, and you can ask him to get the 7 and 5, 7.5, 8 sacks. I think he can do that.
So then the next one, and this is the one that nobody's talking about because he was hurt the last couple games of last year, and Missouri was fine without him. Tyron Hopper, like that kid played well in Green Bay last weekend, and like he was a superstar 2 years ago. Now last year, maybe not quite at the same level, but he was still a very good player on that defense. Missouri kind of threw some numbers at it. I think we think they're okay at line. Like I don't think there are major concerns about linebacker.
There shouldn't be. No, now
I
it's
don't think they have a star though. Like they
yeah,
had Nick
yeah,
Bolton and then they had Tyron Hopper. I
yeah,
I think aggregate they're okay. I don't
yeah.
think they have that level individual player.
Yeah, I was about to. Yeah, I agree with you. There now, I do think like not even comparing it to last year, but going into this off season, the floor may at the linebacker level, like the floor of that room, it was probably a little low. Their floor is significantly higher. So even if they had the same situation with or Chuck Hicks and Tristan Newsom, who we expect to start, if they got hurt, they feel okay with Khalil Jacobs and Corey Flagg stepping in and having to play. But yeah, is there a guy where they're just like he's an NFL guy or he's a well Tristan Newsom maybe, but you know what I'm saying? Like that guy where he stands out and he could be the best player on any given day for weeks in a row, something like that. Yeah, probably not right now, at least.
So we talked to Eli Drinkwitz today, and look, largely, guys, I'm gonna be honest, we're out of things to ask him. Like I got nothing. We need game week. I don't have any questions at this point. But the one of the things that I did find interesting was, somebody asked him, I think, about Marvin Burks, and he said, "Look, our safety room, I'm good. We got more experience there than anything." But then he said, unbidden, he said, "Now, cornerback." We got to replace those two NFL guys, and that's really where my concern is. Now, I think they like Drayden Norwood, but again, Drayden Norwood was a really good third corner.
Mhm.
Is he ready to be a number one corner in the SEC? Is he ready to be that guy that was Chris Abrams' drain last year? That like, all right, there's the best guy, go cover him. I don't know. And then Toriano Pride, I don't know that we're sure Toriano Pride's starting week one.
I will have my depth chart stories coming out next couple of days, and so you made a good point last week. If it's a tie, probably goes to the veteran over him, unless Deloach is. But if that was the case, I feel like Deloach they would have maybe made a little bit more of an effort to say like Deloach is he's just taking the first team reps the whole time. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
So yeah, there's questions. My thing about Norwood is, and I know CB1 and CB2 are the same thing because they start, but are they? Kind of just how you said, like they're asking KAD, you've got to shut down that side of the field, basically.
Mhm.
Is Norwood more of a CB2 where like, yeah, he's good, but he's probably better if someone else is there?
Right.
Or like
Right.
that's my thing, is he will be CB1, but is he more of a CB2 and then you got two CB3s? Because then that's where it gets
Right, because last year,
crazy.
if we're honest, Missouri had 2 ones.
Yes,
Those guys were both, like, number 1 SEC cornerbacks on the same team,
correct.
and it allowed Blake Baker to just say, "Oh, we're bringing everybody. We're bringing the house because KAD and then Strake Star, that we're good. But they can go cover these guys." Now, look, Brian Thomas and Malik Neighbors, when you got those 2 guys on the field, and nobody's going one-on-one with them all day. But for the most part, Blake Baker was pretty comfortable tossing those guys out on an island and running a Steve Spagnuolo defense where it was like, all right, we're coming at you. So those are and we run through all those things simply because I think, and this is such a hard line to toe because I have told Missouri fans all offseason, you should have hope. You should be excited for this team. If you don't have that hope, then what is the point of being a fan? At the same time, all I'm saying is, and I've asked a couple of the players, like, you've got to find that line that gets to confident, because you should be confident, but doesn't get too arrogant, doesn't get too, well, of course we're making the playoff. Because even this schedule in this league, like, there are losable games on this schedule. There are as many ways you miss the playoff as ways you make it.
I agree. I will say though, as much as this team talks about not caring about the preseason hype and still saying STP as the 11th team in the country, I think they'll be okay not looking too far ahead or getting over themselves or automatically counting W's for the most part. I mean, I know everybody does it, but
Right.
I think they'll be better than most teams who would be in their spot and as far as handling that.
So that kind of brings this conversation full circle. Like, I generally hate something to prove, nobody believed in us, all that. I hate it. Last year, like, Missouri could say it. Nobody did. They were right. Nobody expected that. I mean, I've talked to, like, Howard Richards told me he picked them 10-2. There's one. There might have been a couple others, but there weren't many. And even Drinkwitz said today, he said, we thought we were pretty good, but we knew we had to go out and prove it. And they hadn't done it yet. So last year, Missouri 100% validated. So I think it was Christian Williams today that I asked, kind of, okay, now that you don't have as many people doubting you, like, where do you find that motivation, the chip on the shoulder? And he kind of smiled and said, oh, you can always find something. Like, they're going to use this. Look, guys, nobody's picking us in the play. Like, and I don't know. It's not as, they're not being ignored like they were last year. Like, last year, just nobody talked about them. This year, people are talking about him. But if I'm Eli Drinkwitz, I'm writing all these predictions down and saying nobody thinks you're getting there.
Yeah, I think what they're doing this time around compared to last year was, no one had them on the radar. They're
Including
500
like
team.
us. We
Yeah,
cover them every day.
like I think I said 7-5, and I was teeter-tottering to 8-4 based on the K-State game. I remember that. So I think it was no one is picking them barely to make a bowl game, and now so there was an STP for that, and then this year it's more of STP because now at this certain lunch table we're at, basically, now people are ignoring us there. We've made it to the cool kids table, but once we got there, they're still just like, you're still new here though. You look cool, but so now they're just making that, and they're kind of running with that.
Yeah. So I think I know your answer to this question, because based on the predictions you made, but I picked them 10-2. But if I was pressed on, okay, they're not going to finish 10-2, what do you think's more likely, 9 or 11? I would lean toward 9-3 being more likely than 11-1. And I think you're the opposite.
Yeah. But it's like 51%, 49%. I just feel like I'm just being a little risky, just a little bit.
Yeah.
When I look at the team,
if I could pick 9.5 and 2.5, that is what I would do.
Right.
That's where I'm really at.
I mean, I just look at the schedule. We agree that it's a pretty favorable schedule, and there's a lot of teams they should beat. Alabama is really just that one for me, but like another big one is Oklahoma, and like you're high on Oklahoma. I think the same way you said about Missouri, if they have, if they're 4-3 by the time they get to Alabama, you can see them kind of teeter-tottering on what are we playing for after that game. Yeah. Oklahoma has like 3 or 4.
Oh, they have a nightmare of a schedule.
Yeah, they have a lot of good teams they face before they get to Missouri. So what if they're in that mode? And I'm not saying they're not, or I'm not saying they will be, because they're ranked 16th for some type of reason. I mean, people do think they will be good, and they usually do have a good roster. But what if that's the case for them? And so
that's what it is with OU. I think OU has talent. I think because OU if OU had Missouri's schedule, I think the over-under for them would be 9.5, not 7.5. Like, I think Missouri and Oklahoma on a neutral field is a very, very interesting. Like, I think they're very similar teams. It's just because of that schedule, I think people are saying, well, Oklahoma's only going to win 7 games, so they're not any good. It's not that they're not good. Like, Florida has a ton of talent. We saw it here last year. Like, I think Florida could actually be good and go 6-6. And that goes back to this league, right? Like, Missouri's got talent. But you can go 8-4 in this league with talent. You can go 7-5 in this league with talent.
Yeah, I'll also say though,
because everybody has it.
Right. I'll also say Oklahoma, while they could be maybe like anywhere from like 7-5, to a playoff team or whatever, even if they were in the middle of that 8-4 and 9-3, they definitely could beat Missouri. Like that's like they could be any team, like you was just saying. So it's not it's not completely I hope I didn't mislead you, but it's not a completely if their record is this going against the Missouri game, that means they're automatically going to lose to Missouri on the road. It's not the case. They can, how the SEC goes, especially a team like that who, in their own right, they would be thinking they have something to prove because they're coming into a new conference. They're getting this gauntlet of a test. So every game for them is proving to someone new that they belong, with the big boys and stuff like that.
The last thing Brent Venables wants all offseason long is for everybody to say, see, we told you that league you were in sucked, and this one's a big boy league. I want to remind you guys before we kind of move this forward, again, get in touch with our friend James Carlton. He is now my insurance agent. I did that. You can see his information is on the bottom of the screen there, carltoninsurance.net. 314-961-4800. Again, he's gonna make a donation to NIL efforts if you give him a call and just get a quote from him. So, all right, if Missouri's Luther Burden, preseason first team All-American. I think that was yesterday. I get my days confused. They're all the same, but I think it came out on Monday. For Missouri to get where we're talking about, if Missouri is a playoff team, does Luther Burden have to be a postseason All-American?
Yeah, probably.
You think?
Probably so. I mean, he's supposed to be. We've got him top 2 receivers with the guy in Arizona.
The kid out of Arizona is he's in the conversation.
Will be number. You have an instant number 3 that fits in.
I'd have to kind of
go do research, but there's not one off the top of your head. So he's supposed to be a top 2 receiver, for most people. So you've got that. And then I think about all the other options and weapons they have on offense is so much different from when he first came in. Like, sure, he'll get doubled, through the season because a lot of coordinators will have anybody but him. But you cannot do that all game long and realistically expect to win games when the talent, the floor of the other talent around him has raised. Like, you know what I mean? So he should be able to put up numbers and, still impact the game so much that he can be a postseason, All-American or whatever the case is.
Right. But the other thing I think is, I mean, look, Theo Weiss proved all the people. Like, I was skeptical on Theo Weiss last year. I'm like, he's never really played like a 5-star in college, but he was very good. We know what Marquise Johnson can do. Big play guy, right? Mookie Cooper's solid, consistent. We know Brett Norfleet's potential. Josh Manning has, I think, maybe had the best camp of any offensive player that we didn't come in expecting. So my point is, yeah, I think if you play Missouri, they got Nate Noel and Marcus Carroll in the backfield. If you play Missouri, you have to go number 3's not beating us. However we lose, it's not going to be because of him. So, I mean, I think Luther could have games with 4 catches for 35 yards that are really effective because Marquise Johnson has 2 for 80 and Theo Weiss has 6 for 100 and Missouri runs. I mean, if you look at the second half of last year, Luther's numbers tailed off in the second half of the season because what happened was what they did against Kansas State scared the piss out of every other defensive coordinator that played them after that. And they said, well, we're not losing that way. We're not losing because Luther's running past us, right? And so Kirby Moore said, cool, we're just going to hand the ball to Cody Schrader, and he's going to run for 1,700 damn yards this year. So I think he can affect it. I think he can have a great season, and Missouri can be a playoff team without him putting up the numbers that will land him on a postseason All-American team.
While I get your point, and I can agree a little bit to that, I also think if this team is in postseason contention, Luther Burden for most people is the first name that comes up to mind when they think Mizzou. So sometimes you kind of get he's the best player, even if he doesn't have the numbers. He's the best player on the best team that we're now about to see in the playoff or whatever, you kind of get a little. It feels like bonus points for that, even if people see because a lot
I
more
agree.
people will be watching the games and stuff like that. So he may get some slack if he doesn't have the same production, but it's still hard for me to see him maybe like in your scenario where he has a good season, but not like a postseason award season. How many yards is that? Because he had 1,212 last year, or yeah. So what does that look like for
Let's
you?
let's say he has 950 yards this year.
How many touchdowns? He's had 9 the last 2 seasons, like
You know,
each.
8 to 10. Yeah.
I think he may.
I'm not sure he's an All-American then.
I think he can squeeze in
Because
if
I
this
think there's
continues.
going to be dudes out there putting up 1,300 yards. You know,
I'm sure there is, but if you're on a playoff team, I don't know. You may be able to get another. Maybe able to get another second team nod, but it also wouldn't surprise me if your
Uh,
scenario, happened.
so along the same lines, I think I'm correct saying Luther was the only Missouri player on any of the preseason All SEC teams, right? First, second,
Oh,
third team. He was the only guy mentioned.
right, yeah, preseason all SEC, yeah.
All right. So how many guys do they need on one of those? Don't have to be first team. How many guys need to be on those teams postseason for Missouri to be a playoff team?
How many did they have last year? Maybe like
I don't know
7.
how many they had last year, but I'd say absolute minimum 5 guys have to find themselves on those lists. Absolute bare minimum.
Mm,
And I'm not even going to say which 5. Like I just think you're talking, you know, 24. You're talking the 72 best players in the SEC, basically.
yeah,
If
you
you're going to
do.
be a
Yes.
playoff team, you better have 5 of them.
Yeah, I think that 5 to 6 is probably uh the bare minimum.
Yeah.
If you're going to be a playoff team.
I mean, you'd like one to be an offensive lineman, one to be a defensive lineman. You'd love one to be your quarterback.
That one is going to be if he plays like one, but he's not one. I think that's a little different. I know that's kind of in the gray, but
Yeah.
yeah, I get what you're saying. Yeah, maybe
Because I mean, that's tough with Carson Beck and Jalen Milroe in the league and the buzz they're getting.
in the
What if
Ole Miss,
Yeah, Jackson Dart. What
yeah,
if Garrett Nussmeier, takes LSU to 10 wins, or if people can't wait for Nico to light it up in Knoxville, and he's going to put up silly numbers because he's in Josh Heupel's system. So
yeah.
yeah, you never know. We got a couple questions here. Sean says, "What's more likely, Brady 25 to 30 touchdowns and 3,500 yards passing, or Luther having a Denario Alexander type year, which was 1781 and 16 touchdowns?"
This is
Those don't necessarily have to be mutually exclusive.
this is an easy one for me. It's Brady Cook because he has more options.
Right.
He can spread it out and especially with all the speedsters they got. You know the not the jet pass, but the little quick toss pass they do when someone the jet sweep. Um, he can get touchdowns off of that with the guys they've got on the team and screens and stuff like that. Like he had 21. I think it was 21 passing touchdowns, 8 on the ground. He may have to do he may can be able to afford to do less work with his legs, although he probably won't, and rack it up in passing TDs.
And also, I think yardage, receiving yardage, like 1,000-yard rushers are way more common in college football than a
Yeah.
1,000-yard receiver. Like, so do you playing 12 games, averaging 100 yards receiving a game? Off the top of your head, how many people would you guess in the country had 1,200 yards receiving last year?
4.
There were 10, but still, that's basically one guy every 13 teams has a 1,200-yard season. There are way more 1,000-yard rushers than that. I would get, and some of those guys like Ricky White took 14 games to do it. Tez Johnson from Oregon played 14 games. He had 86 catches for 11 to 82. I mean, there were only 2 guys over 1,500, and nobody was within 140 yards of that Denario Alexander season. Roma Dunze had 1,640 yards, but he also played 15 games.
Yeah.
I mean, it's tough to pile up those kind of numbers.
And if I'm remembering this right, I don't have it pulled up, but Luther's 1,212 yards, I believe that was the third most in school history for a single season. Then I think
That
and
sounds
then
about
I
right.
think Macklin had 1,260. I know it was another 12, about something like that. And then what you just said about like the fact that no one has broke 1,300 yards besides Alexander, and that was what
2009.
2009. Okay, so we're talking about 15 years now, and no one's even cracked 1260 plus. Like, yeah, that's incredibly hard just to get to 1,300, let alone 1,700.
Yeah. So okay, the other question we had, kind of along these same lines. Do you see Burton and Weiss get a lot of catches and yards in the first few games so they have video for the draft? Okay. Luther Burton could not play a game this year, and he's getting drafted in the first round.
He really could. He really could. I'll
He
not
could opt
come
out
with
of the entire season.
yeah. Okay,
Yeah.
that's a good one. He could opt out, and he would still easily be a first round.
He's a first round pick. And Theo Weiss, like, this is Theo's fifth year in college, man. They know what he could do. I mean, yeah, you want to put some film, but I can promise you that Eli Drinkwitz is not going out saying, "Hey, we got to get these guys draft film." He is trying to win games. Now, the only situation in which that might ever occur is, let's say you're 7-4 and really playing for nothing against Arkansas. He might do like he did with Tyler Beatty 2 years ago and just go, "Hey, we chasing school records and draft film. Let's feed these guys the ball," right? But that's it.
Yeah, Drink said something. Maybe it was Drink or Christian or Johnny. I forgot. Like again, they all run together.
We talk
But
to a lot of people.
somebody said something basically like if they keep winning, like the stats, the accolades, they'll rack up. So they don't need to do that, especially versus Murray State. Like I guess in a video game, it'd be easy to just go crazy and put 84 up on them and everybody have 100 yards plus and stuff like that. But
Right.
the opposite would probably happen. It'd probably be able to go to Marcus Carroll, Nate Noel, maybe some of the younger guys and get them seeing what they can do instead of risking injury because you want to run up the scoreboard on an FCS opponent,
Yeah. Well, I'm about to feed you the easiest question we've maybe ever had on this show. Who has more yards after catch, Theo or Luther?
Well, one, Luther is a yak or rat guy, and Theo is an 80-20 jump ball guy anyway, and a red zone guy. So I'm still, so every time I think about Theo, though, 77-yard screen pass for a touchdown versus Florida, I still didn't think he had wheels like that. So not obviously that's the most he had after one reception, but not too many of those.
I mean, Luther, he is a yards. That's his thing, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I watched the last, like the fourth quarter of that Kansas State game was on TV the other night, and I had forgotten Missouri's last touchdown was like it was a screen pass to Luther that wasn't particularly well thrown. He wasn't really even open, and he just beat everyone to the corner and went for a 30-yard touchdown. I mean, it was done almost completely on his own. He did catch a nice block late from Tyler Stevens.
Oh, Tyler Stevens love.
He did. It was a huge block. It got him in the end zone. Norfleet over under 500 yards.
Under.
I agree. It's under.
That's not even so much about Norfleet. It's just the receivers, the running backs, the tight ends. Once you have those type of position players and your quarterback is experienced, he doesn't need the security blanket as much unless it's like Brock Bowers or something like that. You can afford to go away from the tight end a little bit, and he'll be in a timeshare a little bit, just a little bit.
And I think Norfleet averaged like 9 yards a catch last year. So if he's getting to 500, he got to catch 55 balls, and he's not catching 55 balls.
Yeah, I think he had somewhere around like 16 or 17 for like 150, somewhere around there. So yeah.
All right, so this has been all playoff stuff. Maybe on next week's show we'll make some playoff picks from other leagues, but I just want to go with what the board was talking about today. Are you good with this playoff format? You got issues with it?
I'm not gonna act like I've dived super deep into it. I do think it's interesting though, like the top 12 thing. I got my head wrapped around the G5 team. They could be 24th and get into the playoff. But I think it's still hard wrapping my mind around you can be 10th, and miss
be third
playoff.
Oh, yeah.
So that's kind of the thing where I'm just like, but what I hope happens, please give the 12 team a run. I don't want 16 teams to be there like it because
it's already going to 14 in 2 years.
See, exactly my point. I don't like that. I'm not a fan of everybody gets to play everybody wins an award. I get it. Everybody, like, it makes the regular season mean something, but that's not me personally. I like winning,
Well,
or we just don't.
and here's my thing with the group of 5 team. A group of 5 team cannot have a bad day and make the playoff, right? Like, I mean, okay, yeah, if they're playing a really terrible opponent, they can. But I mean, if they're most of these teams are not going to be like 30-point favorites in a lot of games. So every game against a decent team, like they've got to be on. If a group of 5 team loses twice, they're done. If they lose once, they're probably done.
It has to be a good loss too.
Has to be a good loss, and
14.
even then, like then they're at the mercy of, well, okay, Boise State loses one game. Well, what if Memphis doesn't lose at all? Then you're out no matter what. So you cannot really have a bad day because you've got to be the best of 65 teams. If you were in the SEC, we're talking about this. I mean, okay, Missouri can have like 6 bad days because you can have a bad day and you're beating Murray State. You can have a bad day you're beating UMass. You can have a bad day you're beating Buffalo. You can have a bad day you're probably beating Vandy, and then you can have a bad day and lose to Alabama and maybe Texas A&M. I mean, that's 6. You can have 6 bad days in 12 games and still make the playoff if you're in a major conference. You can't do that at all if you're the G5 team, and so I don't. I mean, look. Here's what's going to happen. We're going to get to the end of this year, and it could be Missouri, but whether it's Missouri, whether it's Penn State, whether it's Michigan, whether it's Ole Miss, there's going to be some team that is going to be ranked 12th in the poll in the playoff rankings, and they are not going to get in the playoff. And here's what else is going to happen. There's going to be fans of that team that don't know that until that day. Right.
Yeah.
And I mean, you are going to see anger like you've never seen before from the fan base that happens to. And look, where we're talking about Missouri, that's why we're saying you want to remove all doubt, you better go 11-1. Because if you go 10-2 with this schedule and you're sitting there at 11th or 12th, then yeah, you might be the team that's out watching Boise State go to Eugene, Oregon. And yeah, it'll suck. I get it. But everybody knows the rules going in. It's like when you go up there and you got 2 strikes, yeah, the umpire might have called you out on a pitch that was 4 inches outside, but you shouldn't have left it up to him.
Yeah. So that, and I think the format is okay. I think what will get shaky is if they do the thing where the Big Ten, the SEC basically get 4 spots each or 3 spots each. I forgot what the number, but it was something like
they haven't done that yet. But also, the Big Ten and the SEC are going to get 4 teams. I mean, how I see no situation in which. Okay, let's do this. Either, neither, or both. Which of those leagues gets at least 4 teams in the playoff?
Wait, ask that again.
Either, neither, or both. So does one of them get 4 teams in? Does neither of them get 4 teams in? Or do both of them get 4 teams in? I think both is the most likely.
Yeah, they'll probably both get. I'm just saying.
Because like the Big 12's getting 1, the ACC's getting 1/2, and the Group 5's getting 1. There's 8 spots left, man.
It just feels like it just depends on how these teams are. Like if it's I don't know, let's say the Big 12 or whatever, they've got, undefeated team and they got a 1-loss team or something like TCU, Kansas State. That's the first one that comes to my mind like a couple years ago. Like, what if you got something like that and one of those teams,
it's possible,
they lose out to a 10-2 SEC or Big Ten team or something like that. And I would get the argument, but it's still like,
okay, well then let's paint this scenario. Let's say there's 2 Big 12 teams in, 2 ACC teams in, and a Group of 5 team in. There's still 7 damn spots left. One of those leagues still going to get 4 teams.
Yeah, you're right.
I think 5 SEC teams is more likely than 3.
Yeah,
like the SEC is going to get at least 4 teams in this thing.
My thing is more thing is about guaranteeing the spots.
I don't want to guarantee it. They should have to earn it.
That's more so my issue. If they actually have the teams, that's not the problem. But like saying before the season starts, we're just going to make sure they have it. That's where it kind of feels like, all right, y'all. Same thing for Big Ten too.
Guarantee 1. Guarantee your and that's what people currently are mad about is that that the Group of 5 team is guaranteed, but also that the ACC and Big 12 team that champion is getting a bye and is a top 4 seed. I don't have a problem with it. If there's no reward for winning a conference, why have a conference?
Yeah, and definitely eliminate the title game. Question: I don't know if you have, but I feel like we've transitioned to calling stuff P4. Are we going to G4 now? Do we call it the group of four? Or
No, because I think there's still 5 of the
oh, I'm tripping.
group of 5. Yeah.
Let's redact
I mean,
that
you can
from
call it
the.
whatever you want.
We
I
can
don't really
redact
know
that
how
from the
many different.
podcast. Maybe I still should throw G4 for the people who was watching or listening to this one.
Kyle's bringing up a good point. I always forget that Notre
Dame.
Dame exists and might take a playoff spot. So that may take a. But look, I'd be shocked if the SEC doesn't have 4 teams in the playoff.
Yeah. How do you feel about that? Like Notre Dame not being able, like, is that something if you
Not
whatever
being able to get
school
a bye.
would you negotiate something like that?
I think it's super smart if you're Notre Dame. You get to host a playoff game.
Yeah, that recruiting would go through the roof, especially if
I
you
mean,
always make it 5 or 6. If you're number 5 or 6,
yeah,
that's
right. Like the best they can ever be is 5. If Notre Dame's the number 1 team in the country, they are the 5 seed. They
which is
cannot get a bye.
yeah.
And they agreed to that
I don't know.
because they
Hmm.
know being the 5 seed is good, man.
Okay, being the 5 seed, let's say this, well, I guess that would answer the question for you. I'll say, would you rather be the 5 seed and you get blown out or you lose at home, or would you be the 4 seed, get the bye and go to the next round? But
Well, no,
obviously
I
you
don't
take
want to.
that,
I don't
but
want to get blown out at home. But you're playing
yeah,
the group of 5 team at home.
right.
You
Which
get
would
blown out at home by Memphis. Piss off. You don't deserve to be in this thing anyway.
you're
Got it.
right.
Got to thank Freeway Jarod. He's here every week, always giving us a little tip, a little super chat. Always appreciate that. We're never going to ask for it, but if you guys want to do that, we certainly appreciate it. It helps us do things with the show, generate some revenue, and do some extra things. We always put the money back into the site, and he wants us to shout out the Luther Bird and Livy Dunn Nautica collaboration. I won't personally be buying it, but good for Luther, man.
I
I
didn't
mean,
see
I
it.
don't buy new clothes, so.
I didn't see it. I just seen the tweet, but I mean, hey, congratulations.
Yeah, good for Luther, man. He's making his money here. So look, I can't express how glad I am that the next time we do this, we're gonna have games to talk about, man. Like I am so tired of trying to fill the off season, breaking down. I'm sick of talking about NIL. I'm sick of talking about the transfer rules. I'm sick of breaking down playoff scenarios. Like, let's go over the next 14 weeks, figure out who's gonna be in this thing.
Well, like I said in 4 down territory, we're entering level 4 of the calendar year, which is the start of the play. But Gabe, it's probably going to take you until 3 minutes into the first quarter versus Murray State, where you want to get to level 5, which is when they play Texas A&M.
Oh yeah, look, I don't like. It's a terrible game. I'm gonna be in the press box complaining about that game. Literally starting at like 7:04 when Missouri starts. So let's do this real quick. We'll end here. Kickoff at 7 o'clock. Missouri scores its first touchdown at what time?
I'm gonna. Do they get the ball first?
I don't know. That's part of it.
Okay, well, let's say they score their first touchdown around 7 minutes to go.
7 minutes to
In the
go in the
first
game.
quarter. First quarter.
Okay.
No. First quarter.
Oh, in the first quarter, right? Yeah, I think that's way too late. I think they score 7 minutes after kickoff, like not 7 minutes of game time, like 7 minutes of real time after kick. At
Mm,
7:07, I think it's 7-0.
it should be. It
It,
probably should be 14. There should be a
I'll,
pick
I'll,
6 or something in there.
I'll be honest though, it'd be pretty funny if Murray State got the ball and scored and went up 7-0, like, and then Missouri goes on to win
Yeah,
58-7. Like, there's no danger of Missouri losing that game. I just think just that those couple minutes right there where they're trailing Murray State would be that would be elite x.com time right there.
yes, but if that results in the defense basically being monstars or something, and like just going full Madden for the rest of the game, I think we would see those X and Twitter comments flip back the other way and it's just like, guys, everybody misses a free throw or something. Like
For sure.
it'd go
For
like
sure.
that.
That's why I'm saying an opening touchdown and a 58-7 loss would be kind of amusing. I
Okay,
would
well we got to explain a little bit. How is this open? Is it a first kickoff? Would that be it, or does it need to be a 15 play
I
drive?
was no, I was at I think it was University of South Dakota a few years ago. They got the ball first, and literally their first play from scrimmage was an 81-yard touchdown run against Missouri. Missouri won the game pretty easily, but it was just complete busted play, and yeah, huge run. So let's go something like that. Murray State 81-yard touchdown run, first play from scrimmage. Just for entertainment's sake, guys. Look, man, it's been a long off season. I gotta have something. So, but hey, do want to remind you, we've been at it close to an hour, and we're gonna do this every week. We're kind of looking at the schedule. Next week's gonna be a little bit different because obviously they play on Thursday. We're looking at it probably Sunday night, maybe Monday. But then definitely during the season, we're working it out. We'll probably be here on Monday nights with you, but we'll let you know for sure where it goes. We're going to have post-game shows. We're going to have opponent previews, all that here on the YouTube channel. So make sure you like, comment, subscribe. Again, if you want to, share it on social media, if you want to throw a super chat our way every now and then, we certainly appreciate any positive words, any nice things you can do to spread the word. Obviously, we're going to be on the website doing the things we always do every single day, and encourage you all to join us there. But if you join us here, we appreciate that. And we want you to get in touch with James Carlton at carltoninsurance.net or 314-961-4800. Once again, I can tell you guys, James is going to get you a good deal on your insurance. He saved me a lot of money on my insurance. So that's reason number one to call him. But then he's also going to take $25 of that and throw it into the NIL pot if you call him and get him a quote. So you're helping out your favorite team. You're helping out yourself. Your wife will like you, or your husband will like you because you save money. And James will like you because he gets your business and he's a good guy. So take care of that. Do that. Appreciate you being here. And we will be here Sunday night, maybe before. We're working on some things. Maybe get back to you before Sunday night. But if not before, we'll talk to you on Sunday, and it will be game week. Thanks for joining us. See you next time.